We are ready for section number 142, Jesus teaches by parables. And this is actually a continuation of the Olivet Discourse. It's, I treat it as a separate section just because it went into a new chapter. You also might want to see Alfred Edersheim on page 1116 if you have that book, and that is available online. If you want to get a hold of that, and you can get a little bit more insight on this parable of the 10 virgins. And he's got some extra notes that I think are interesting in there. Typically, I'm getting extra notes from all over the place, but sometimes they're of such nature that I recommend actually looking them up a little bit. Okay, so we've got the foolish virgins. This is about another wedding, related to another wedding feast. Now, Jesus had used the problem of individual responsibility of qualifying for a wedding feast back in Matthew 22, verses 1 to 14, and that dealt with people who were rejecting individually the invitation for the wedding. But here we now have not people rejecting an invitation, but people as a group who are responsible, being held responsible. So it's more of a group responsibility here, which allows us to consider, especially in the light of the fact that we've just been talking about Israel, that Christ has been criticizing Israel as a nation for falling short. So then the idea of these 10 virgins being representative of groups that are going to be held responsible before the return sort of lends itself to that. I don't know how firm I would want to be able to make that, but I think it's not a bad interpretation to make. Edersheim said, according to Jewish authorities, it was the custom in the East to carry in a bridal procession about 10 such lamps, as we're going to read about. And so he says, we have the less reason to doubt that such was also in Palestine, since, according to the rubric, 10 was the number required to be present at any office or ceremony, such as that the benediction accompanying the marriage ceremonies. So I don't know if people are aware, but when you go to have a synagogue, you can't form a synagogue. I believe it's unless if you have 10 men who are going to form the synagogue. So anytime you have a synagogue, it's got to be 10 men that form that. And so evidently this is a thing that's dealing with official actions and such. And so hence this would probably be related to the idea of these 10 virgins. They would be there to accompany, they were like bridesmaids for the bride. Well, since Jesus had been critiquing Israel as a group, the parable of the 10 virgins represents more of a group dynamic that he's dealing with. There are two types of groups in this setting then. One group who had let their lamps go out and they were unprepared on top of that. And the other group, which was ready for the resurrection. So it is not out of reach to suggest that the foolish virgins represent Israel, although it would really apply to any group who lost their distinctiveness or faithfulness, their distinctions of faithfulness. And so you could have a whole church movement that was maybe operating in the name of the Lord just as much as the Jews had been, and the church group lost its oil, so to speak. And so that's what's going on here with the foolish virgins. And what they had were lamps. These were not torches, as somebody might want to guess, but they would be a bowl that would be carrying oil in it, and they would have a wick in it, and they would be put on a pole, and it would light the way as they made their way in the bridal procession. If you want to remember that in a Jewish wedding, what would happen is a bridegroom would come to fetch his bride, and they wouldn't know exactly which night it was going to be, and so they had to be ready for anything. So we get to question 807 then. When the bridegroom returned to receive his guests to the wedding feast, why were half of the virgins not ready to greet him? And verses 1 to 9 we read, Matthew 25, 1-9 says, "Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a great cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you, but go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves." So the answer that we got is, it is C indeed. They had not prepared ahead of time in case there should be a delay. Okay, so let's look at A and B first. The wrong answer is they were sleeping. Well, the idea of sleeping does not indicate that one group was irresponsible while the other was not. You see, because both had been sleeping, right? Both groups had been sleeping. And to me, this emphasizes the fact that normal life goes on while waiting for the Lord, which then enhances the whole effect of the surprise effect of his coming. And so they were just supposed to be going on normally, and but being ready and being prepared all the time. Okay, they were having a party of their own. Okay, instead of waiting on the party that they were about to go to, were they having a party of their own? Well, the idea that they could have been at a party would have been interesting. If that had been the case, it would have implied that they were of an entirely different religion, though, in that case, I think, if that were the case, that they had been tempted by. The limitation here is to 2 groups that were reasonably held to be responsible, and that one had just completely failed that way. So if they were attending a different party, that would have been symbolic of a whole different religion. But no, they were equally responsible before the Lord. So C, they had not prepared ahead of time in case there should be a delay. It would be reasonable to expect that they had seen the example of the wise virgins. Now, the wise virgins, they came in with sufficient oil that they could burn while they were there, and should anything happen where things got low, they had oil in reserve. This speaks to the sense that we have today, even amongst us who are looking for the Lord's coming. Okay, we have a couple of different aspects. Some people are so convinced that the Lord is coming shortly that they're not prepared for the long haul in case he should tarry. Okay, what if Christ should tarry? We should be planning for the future also. Now, this does not mean that the ones who are planning and preparing for the faith or for the future are necessarily less faithful than others. Just because we're preparing sermons for the next, I've got sermons that I'm working on for the next 2 months, it looks like. Okay, now that doesn't mean that I'm faithless. It just means that I'm also preparing for the future. I'm just as happy as some people will ask me about things like this. Hi, come on in. As some people will ask me, Brother Tone, would you move over a little bit so they can see your book with you? We're doing a Life of Christ study, and you can share in their book. Oh, wait, is that Shamari? No, you look just like, doesn't he look like Shamari? What's your name? Jaden. Does he not look like Shamari? Okay, everybody. Okay, yes, okay. You look like a teenager that we've had. Okay. Okay, so we're doing the Life of Christ study. We're at the point where Christ is at just before the crucifixion. He is, this is about 2 days before the crucifixion, and he's meeting in the temple, and he's doing specific teachings. And so right now this is a parable of the 10 virgins, which I just had mentioned, just to get you up to speed here with what we're doing, at least for tonight. Okay, the 10 virgins, they represent 2 different kinds of groups before Jesus comes back. The one group is the one that had the oil in their lamps, and they were prepared, ready for the bridegroom to show up at any time. That would be the representation of Jesus coming at any time. And then the other group of the half of the virgins were like bridesmaids, and their oil ran out. And now they're wondering, oh, we're not ready. And what I'm saying here is that this speaks to the fact that even in our day, not only was Israel not ready for the Lord in their time, but in our day, 2,000 years later, we're still anxious for Christ to be returning. We expect him at any moment. But just because we expect him at any moment doesn't mean we don't prepare for the future. And so we're looking to the future while at the same time we are anticipating Christ, like right now. You know, sometimes I'll have somebody ask me the question, well, when do you think Christ is coming back? And I'll say, well, okay, let me see, 10, 9, 8, 7. The idea is we're supposed to expect him at any time. He's coming like a thief in the night. Okay, but just because we are preparing for the future doesn't mean that we're any less anxious. Now, there are some people that are so not thinking about the return of Christ, they're only preparing for the future. And then you got the opposite problem of some people, they're so thoughtful about Christ's return that they're not preparing at all for the future. You have to be doing both. You have to be ready at any instant, and yet at the same time, make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We should be making sure to be studying. We should be making sure to be preparing to handle just anything. It reminds me of the Apostle Peter in 1 Peter talking about how that we've got to be ready to give an answer for the hope that lies in us. This is why sometimes I'll have people say, well, I don't know about studying apologetics. Apologetics is great stuff to study. Okay, but some people think, well, I'm not going to necessarily need that when I'm trying to tell somebody about how to get saved and how to go to heaven. You say, well, maybe not. But then maybe you're going to get that person that needs the extra answers. And you want to be the one who's ready to handle anything. Now, at the same time as I say that, we want to remember that it's not by our cleverness, it's not by our wisdom. We want to be ready to handle anything. But as we're going to see when we get to, I think, Sunday afternoon, we talk about Judas Iscariot and the Jewish leaders. We want to remember that it's not our wisdom that does it; it's the power of the Holy Spirit that does it in that person's heart. But we'll get to that on Sunday afternoon in that study. Okay, so question 808: why were the foolish virgins shut out? Okay, they ended up getting shut out, and this is based on Matthew 25. Verses 7 to 10, he says, then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go you rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Okay, so the answer that you got was C. They should have seen to their preparations, and now it was too late. They should have seen the preparations. It was too late for them to do that. That's the reason why they were shut out. When you look at A, was the bridegroom being spiteful by shutting them out? No. The bridegroom was not being spiteful. It's just that there are consequences to our actions. By the way, that's people at home if you hear an extra voice. Okay. We have people online watching also. Okay. There are consequences to actions, and this is something that people have got to reckon with in life. When people don't take the precautions, they don't take the actions necessary, don't be surprised when stuff happens. Okay, B, the wise virgins were mean and wouldn't sell to them. Okay, is that the reason that they were shut out? No, the wise virgins actually were only being responsible themselves. Now you got to stop and think about this. They were prepared for the future. They had gotten their oil. They were prepared for anything. And that's all they were doing, because if they had given of their oil, they might have been out of oil also. People don't realize that there are many distractions that Satan is happy for people to attend to in order to take them out of action. We've got to be careful that we have a proper sense of boundaries. You want to be generous with just everything the Lord's given you. There are limitations that we have. Okay? There are, for instance, not everybody here knows it, but I'll mention it. On Tuesdays you can't get me. Okay, it's not unless if it's a matter of life and death. I do look at messages and things like that, and if you're in the hospital and you're dying, I'll come and see you. Okay, or if you're meeting with a funeral director, I'll go and see you. But Tuesdays, I have to say that according to biblical principles, that you're supposed to have a Sabbath. You're supposed to take a day out of the week. And for preachers, some preachers, they take Monday. I take Tuesday. Used to take it on Friday at one time. I've known to take it on Saturday. And the reason why I do that is because early on in the ministry, I learned that there's always something to be able to get your attention. A lot of people, I like to say, I love the fourth commandment. The reason I love it so much is because it's so underappreciated. First commandment, to love God, to have no other gods before God, right? Okay. Last commandment, thou shalt not covet. Those are great commandments. But the fourth commandment about remembering the Sabbath day to keep it holy. People are like, oh, yeah, I should go to church, right? Yeah. No, the whole Sabbath principle about ceasing and setting limitations on yourself to recognize that the Sabbath was made for man. The Sabbath was made because we need the rest. And so that comes into play with whether it's drug addiction, it comes into play with interpersonal relationships, being able to know how to set limits and take rest from things. So the idea is that there are limitations that we have to recognize. They were just being responsible. Satan would love to have us get distracted with stuff and get all caught up in all kinds of needs and being careful with everything, but we have to know our limitations. Some of the things that people don't realize, that church members don't realize when it comes to church operations, they don't realize how much they're hurting the church. Okay, by not going to church and being a responsible member, they're causing other people to have to take up the slack, okay? By missing church and their responsibilities when they're here, somebody's got to take up the slack. By missing church and leaving it to the pastor or other members to assume that they're in genuine need and not just being irresponsible, which forces a spiritual well-being call. People, they might skip out on church. I don't know what church you might come from, but don't do this to a pastor, okay? Don't make them, you don't just skip out and say, oh, well, because people are wondering, oh, is so-and-so okay? And then you don't know whether you should go and call on them and have them get offended because you're being nosy, or not call on them and have them get offended because you don't care enough, okay? So don't force a spiritual well-being call. By not returning calls in other contexts, forcing extra discipleship to convince people of what they should be doing. By merely attending church but not participating, leaving it to other members to do double duty to make up for them by not participating. By going to church but avoiding or ignoring opportunities to serve. The more responsible people have to make up for them, and they get distracted from the work. There's only so much that you can do. So that's what these women were doing, these young virgins were doing. They were attending to business, just like we have to make sure that we stay on top of business. Okay, over the years, there have been numerous times that people have missed and asked about so-and-so. Okay, that happens. Oh, and recently, those who seem to have dropped out, I have people come and say, how's so-and-so doing? Whatever happened to so-and-so? Now, the so-and-sos not only don't know, they don't usually know what effect they've had, but some have also strongly argued that their being missing shouldn't make a difference. It does. When somebody's missing, it makes a difference. People care about each other. They sometimes even criticize people who care, suggesting that they're gossiping or should mind their own business. Well, there's a point where such people are only slightly regretfully let go when you say, can't do anything with it. So these young virgins, they were tending to business, realizing the limitations that they have. So see, they should have seen, the foolish virgins should have seen to their preparations. Now it was too late. The fact that the foolish virgins only waited till it was too late to try to be prepared indicates that they could have done that at any time before, but they didn't. They might complain that they couldn't have known that the bridegroom was coming. Doesn't hold up, because the wise ones had managed to be continually prepared. They all knew that the bridegroom was coming. Being prepared is something that must be continually attended to. Okay, question 809. Okay, what is the most important way to be prepared for Jesus when he comes? This is based on Matthew 25, verses 11 and 12. It says, afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, verily, I say unto you, I know you not. The answer is B, to be saved.
B.
Yeah, that's the way that's the most important way to be prepared. When you look at A and C together, be working hard and be studied up, is that the most important way? No, those are important, not the most important. Okay, working and studying are important in being prepared to meet the Lord, but we have to be careful, as with all parables, not to read too much into the customs of the day regarding weddings. You can be working and studying and lost and on your way to hell. It's possible to see somebody in church their whole life long, and there's been a good number of stories out there of somebody even in ministry who ends up realizing that they had not been saved all along, and they finally take it seriously and get saved. The foolish virgins represent a group that had oil, but they failed to continue on. So if oil can represent the Holy Spirit here, the lack of oil can be understood as a dead, spiritless church. So working hard and being studied up is important, but it doesn't get a person saved. Okay, so B, the fact that the Lord of the feast declares that he does not know them indicates that they were not saved at all. Okay, they're not saved at all. It's not got to do were they prepared enough as far as having the oil. They didn't even belong. When Jesus says, I know you not, that's a problem. And this bolsters the argument that they represent dead churches today, where you don't really have the gospel being preached properly. Okay, before I go on to the next section, anybody want to have something to add on or a question? Anything to add on? Anybody at home? Okay, the servants and the talents, that section, we covered that back when we did page 215. Go and see your notes from that time period. Okay, the next section then, treating the stranger, naked and sick and in prison. Okay, this goes into Matthew chapter 25, going into verse number 31. What will Jesus do when he comes in his glory? Matthew 25, 31 to 34. Is the basis for this answer. It says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So the answer that we got is A, he's going to separate the sheep, the true believers, from the goats, the unbelievers. Okay, looking at B and C, he's going to welcome everybody into heaven, or he's going to give the unbelievers a second chance if they didn't believe. Well, what we're doing with those two answers, we're repeating here what's been referred to on a number of other occasions, of course, as we've been going through the scriptures. There will be a division between the saved and the lost. Now, modern romantic sentimentalities, people going by just their emotions, their sentimentalities, how they feel about it. Okay, those modern romantic sentimentalities are narrow-minded and unwilling to acknowledge that there should be any judgment in the world. There are some people who say, well, I can't believe in a God who's going to judge people and send them to hell. The problem here is they don't understand the righteousness of God. This is one of the things that is a very big philosophical issue, is how could a loving God allow anybody to hell? Because people don't understand that he's not only a loving God, he is also a holy God. He's a God of righteousness as well as love. Okay. The love of God and the holiness of God met at the cross, where God in his love sent his Son to die for our sins. And that's the justice of God is met by Jesus Christ taking the punishment for our sins. Such people that just look at, oh, well, how could God allow this? Well, the basis of their morality is whether something causes pain or pleasure. This is a major philosophical point. Back in history, all throughout history, people have tried to define what is the definition of good, and it always comes back to what causes pain or pleasure. If it causes pleasure, then it's good. Now, these were the Epicureans, especially in the time of Christ, were teaching that, and that comes down in philosophy to this day. They did say, well, if some pain you go through in order to achieve an ultimate good, then that pain is good. So they did accommodate the sense of pain. Basically, no pain, no gain, right? Was their mentality. And such people who measure morality and goodness based on whether it's pleasurable or not, they reject God because his righteousness does not correspond to their sense of righteousness. It's like they're crossing each other over. Okay, people's sense of righteousness, their self-righteousness and what they determine, basically what seems like a good idea to them, does not match up with God's sense of righteousness. Each person has one chance, and by the way, it's a very long chance. Well, unless if somebody walks out into the street and gets run over by a car. Okay. But people have years typically to be able to respond to Jesus Christ. It's on them if they don't take it to make a decision to surrender to God. So A, separate the sheep, the true believers from the goats, the unbelievers. Well, okay, that's the obvious answer. It's not that Jesus had anything against goats per se. Okay, it's not like, okay, goats are evil animals. Okay, actually, goats could be more productive than sheep in the Middle East there. It's that it was a common figure in shepherding. In the Middle East, they would often have mixed flocks going out, goats and sheep together. The goats were a little bit stronger. They were a little bit more independent than the sheep were. Sheep were more dependent on the shepherd. But goats, being a little bit stronger, were more prolific than the sheep. You had more baby goats being born as a rule. And so they would cull the herds out. They would take some of the goats out. And so what Christ is referring to here is just the nature of how there are, when Christ returns, that there are going to be, there's going to be a separation. Okay, not that goats are bad, it's just that separation is what he's talking about here. And so the true believers here are going to be separated from the people that are not believers. Which brings us to question 811, which is our last question here. Okay, 811, what will characterize the true believers? Now, this is a little bit of a tricky question, but it's going to be based on verses 34 to 46. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, and fed thee, or thirsty, and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger, and took thee in, or naked, and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, insomuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, unto everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was an hungered, and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you took me not in. Naked, and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison, you visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. Let me just point out right away that there are a lot of people, there's a sufficient number of people around that they don't think that there's such a thing as hell. Okay, now either Jesus was making up a lie or not. Okay, and it's not just a hell where somebody's going to be destroyed, annihilated as some teach, and they just cease to exist. No, the punishment is eternal. And so there is going to be that eternal punishment. So the question is, what's going to characterize the true believers? And the answer is, be their compassionate service. It's not going to be their knowledge of the Bible and theology. That's not what's going to characterize somebody who is a true believer. It's going to be what's coming out of their heart. Now, there's a trick to this question here also. But look at C first, okay? Success. How much success they have. Well, success in and of itself is not the measure for a Christian, whether they are a Christian or not. What one does with their success, whether it is great and obvious or small, doesn't matter. That's what matters. Now, you have to reflect on the question how I phrased it here. What will characterize the true believers? It doesn't say what determines whether somebody's a true believer or not. It says, how will you be able to tell what will their character be like? Okay, we want to remember that according to Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, okay, it says, for by grace are you saved through faith, and not of yourselves. It's the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. You have the religions that are based in the world, 100% of them will teach that you have to be good in order to be able to be saved. But it's not of works, lest any man should boast. As Paul told Titus in Titus 3:5, it's not by works of righteousness which we've done, but according to his mercy he saved us. But if you are a believer, it should come out, it should show up in the things that you do. I remember going out hunting with my father, and we had gotten a Weimaraner. Okay, it's a water dog is what it was. It was a dog that was known for going out and fetching the birds that you shot down, ducks that you shot, whatever. But my father, he wanted to go out rabbit hunting. Now, with rabbit hunting is a little bit different. When a dog goes to chase a rabbit, I'm sorry, Maya, to tell you this, okay? Just hold your ears, okay? A little sensitive there, we always remember. But we didn't shoot the rabbits. You'll be happy to know the end of the story is we didn't shoot any rabbits. Okay, so the rabbit dog will go and chase a rabbit, and a rabbit will tend, although running erratically, he'll tend to run in a circle if he's driven. And so a rabbit dog knows to chase the rabbit and comes around, and the rest will spare Maya for. But this bird dog didn't know how to do that. It was not in his blood to do that. He was not bred for that purpose, to do that kind of hunting. Okay, it was not in his character to go out like a rabbit dog. He's a bird dog. There's a difference in there. And we never went duck hunting either, we didn't kill any ducks either. Okay, well, for somebody who's a true believer, you should expect, it is reasonable to expect that they will have that character where they are going to see them hunger and thirst and naked and in prison, etc., and that they're going to have that compassion. It will be natural. It will be natural to them. Now, if somebody doesn't have that, if they're not displaying that, that's not proof that they are unbelievers. It just proves that they are immature and that they're not very well behaved believers. Okay? So the logic doesn't work backwards. You can't extrapolate backwards. No works, no salvation. No, you can say salvation, then you should expect works. And that's what Jesus is talking about here. That's why I phrased the question. They will be characterized by this. So, B, their compassionate service. Sometimes we don't realize what value our compassion has. We might suspect the value at the time we act, but not realize how it fits in the kingdom of God. This is why it's important that we attend church. If we bless those who are not looking for God, you have to ask, in other words, if you're not good to those that you're ministering to amongst yourselves, you have to ask how much more significant when we bless those who are looking for God. We criticize those who won't reach out to people who are dirty. But someone might justifiably complain that they are treated as if they aren't dirty enough to warrant compassion. Compassion is something we just give because that's what we do. One obvious need is some ragamuffin kid who needs loving attention to teach them how to live for God, rather than screw up our face with disdain for them. I've seen times in churches have always had this as an issue, where some kid comes in and they might not have a father at home, and there might be some trouble, and somebody looks at that and says, "Oh, how terrible! Look at the behavior of that child." Yeah, well, that's the child. That's the very one. If you recognize the problem, then you're spiritual enough to be the one to be able to minister to that kid. Okay. If you see a kid misbehaving in church, lend a hand to a parent and have them sit with you so that they can be guided. Okay. And typically, a lot of the kids that we've had come in over the years have been kids that we've brought in, not because they were parents that have families, whole families that came in together for church, but a lot of times it's been kids that we've just brought in. Be their minister. And even if their parents are there, you support the parent by encouraging that kid. They need to see how Christians act. And not just from their parents. Their parents are their first source of inspiration, but they need to see it from that Christian community. And it doesn't have to be just a kid. There are adults who need that guidance as well. Our pleasant demeanor and our friendliness in public, that alone, just going out there and being friendly. I was saying this, remember the other day I was talking about this? Okay. When I go out, some people might think that I'm just being a little odd. Well, I am. But okay, when I'm standing in line, I want to try to find some kind of remark I can share loud enough to be just slightly humorous or whatever. I'm not so concerned about whether I'm a comedian or not. What I'm concerned about is that I want to contribute to a culture of friendliness. Okay, to me, I've been here for 43 years. In a few weeks, in a couple of weeks, we'll have been here. Let me see, is it 43? 1979 we got here. So yeah, 43 years. And I feel comfortable in the area. It doesn't make any difference to me, but I hear from people that are coming in from other areas of the country sometimes, and say, "Oh, the people in this area can be so cold. They can be rushing past you." I think, well, no. If you talk to people, the people are people. They'll talk back to you. Okay, they'll talk with you. Okay, if you say something, so contribute to that culture of friendliness. Because if we can see that, hopefully when we do go to share the gospel with somebody, we won't look like such an oddball speaking to them about the Bible. Why? Because if you got an open culture where people are friendly with each other, then it breaks down where you can get rid of that distraction of suspicion and hostility when you can sit down and talk to your neighbor and have a chance to really get to the gospel. Okay, Satan loves to see people divided, loves to see people at each other's throats. No, be part of the solution. Yes, you will look a little odd, okay, but it's a good odd. It's a good odd. Okay, that brings us to the end of that section, and we're going to go to our prayer in a moment. Let me ask, is there any questions, any insights anybody would like to share while we're here? And
Yeah, I've got one.
go ahead. Anybody from, go ahead.
Yeah, before you were talking about, the importance of being in church and everything, and how about stepping forward, even the next step, and becoming a member?
Yes.
Our pastors preach on this a lot too, because you've got a lot of good benefits of attending church. People contribute and they can serve where they can, but take the next step and become a member, because then you can, participate in church business and serve on other roles that you can't when you're not a member. They miss that blessing.
Right.
And the problem is too, if you're not a member and something goes bad with them, then they're not under church discipline technically, so there is that. Second thing is just something more humorous. Our pastors have been talking about the rapture and the second coming and everything, or the return, I should say. And they've said recently, it'd be so cool if they were that guy while they're up there preaching those words, that's when the rapture happens. Wouldn't you like to be that guy?
Yes. Yeah, would like to be that guy. That guy. Or for that matter, be the one in the middle of witnessing to somebody, even that guy that's out on the street sharing the gospel. Yeah. Okay.